the force is undergoing significant change, both in the way police officers are deployed across Devon and Cornwall and in the use of technology. What are these developments? How will they contribute to making the service more efficient and effective?
Okay. In two parts. Technological, we've now successfully implemented command and control. So there are two really big IT systems for policing. One is how you receive calls from the public. You can command and control big incidents, whether that's a big major public order or critical incidents, but down to your individual incident that you've reported 999 or non-emergency number, and how we deploy officers to that, the immediate response or by appointments. That IT system is in. There were some back-end bits to do, but that was implemented in this last performance and financial year. The next big piece of work is how you investigate crime. Devon and Cornwall's crime intelligence system is, I'm assured, approaching 20 years old. It is, if not the oldest in UK policing, it is certainly the oldest in policing in England. That is a major challenge for any police force to completely realign to a new information technology system. Out with the technological issues, there are the data issues, there are the training issues, but it provides us a lot of opportunities to better share information, reduce reporting times, and improve the way that we analyse crime information to identify future perpetrators and potential future victims. Back to the safeguarding question. So those two are huge. They also provide the platform for mobile data. Mobile data is not used a great deal in the force, and we may return to that. But in our geography really damages us. So the sooner that we can get mobile data into the hands of officers and police staff at the front line, the better. Our current IT systems just don't permit that. The second piece is, though, the permission. CSR made us a very centralist organisation. If you live in Devon and Cornwall, you want your local officers and local staff delivering what you need locally. And what we've done is to look at how we integrate the permissions for local, say, inspector level and teams across the geography to better align resources to local needs. That's slowly coming online, and I'm confident will be embedded by the early autumn or sooner if possible.
Chief Constable, the CSR, just for our listeners, Comprehensive Spending Review, and we'll touch on mobile data a little bit later on, just come back to that. My next question, as we know from the news, events like the dreadful killing of a soldier in Woolwich have reverberations for police services across the country. How do such events affect policing and resourcing in Devon and Cornwall?
In two parts. Following such an event, there's a national agreed community tension indicator. You shouldn't wait for that. You should actually, and we did, proactively grip the situation. So actually when this occurred, the Deputy Chief Constable was the on-call. So just for listeners or watchers, we run 24/7 organisation, and at the most senior levels, my level of the organisation, again, we have a 24/7 on-call. He put in place, which are well tried and tested plans about increasing visibility around key areas, in this case clearly the military establishments, and working with our military colleagues to ensure that they had the information they needed, the protection that they needed, the plans were in place. Secondly, monitoring the intelligence as it came out from London, from meetings with Cobra, which were again in the public domain. And then thirdly,
Cabinet Office briefing.
Cabinet Office briefing room.
Yeah.
And then lastly is our own communities. In particular, in this case, but had it been a different issue, it could have been other communities, the Muslim community, key iconic sites, key community leaders, but also looking at our potential, those who would be inflamed by it. And the obvious cohort there was the English Defence League, monitoring overtly and, if appropriate, other mechanisms for the potential for a backlash. And over the weekend we did see some minor criminal damage, which again was managed locally. So calling matters in the community, watching the risks, being prepared to respond to the risks. And that would have been the same whether it had been an Irish Republican terrorism act, or even if it had been something like the riots of last year. When we had the riots of last year in our cities, we still did work here in the communities. That work also includes social media. So we talk about IT, we use social media quite a lot to communicate with young people and to monitor what's going on. Just very briefly, the second aspect is there is a national policing requirement, and we were asked to provide a capability. So over the weekend we had officers who were deployed in London in support of London, and an incident that occurred over the weekend as well, we deployed officers in support of our regional neighbour Avon and Somerset. But equally I was assured if we'd had issues here, those colleagues would have coming our way, and that's where our local starts to meet the national requirement.
One of the things I want to achieve, and is clearly stated in the plan, is giving a stronger voice to victims and witnesses. This is a complex time for them as we evolve the criminal justice system and both try to ensure that the justice system is more efficient. How can the police service help with this particular issue?
I think at its highest level, I'm the chair of the local criminal justice board. You sit on that board as well, and clearly the victims element of that is written within our strategy. And in your role in commissioning, I'm able to give you the views of the force about our victim services, whether it's from domestic violence through to rape or wider crime. So there's a strategic voice there. I think the second point is, as a leader of my own organisation, my own background and that of my management team has been through policing. And certainly if I look at the incidents that I've dealt with where I've ensured personally the victims get a voice, you look at the Paddington rail crash where I was involved with a lot of the families there, and right the way through to public inquiry, the key lessons I learned and which I share with my staff is you can never not give someone who needs information enough information. The desire for information from victims is time, it's just the demand is there. Some don't want any, some want everything, and you have to be responsive to the individual. And that's why I think in terms of our current performance on victim satisfaction, it's inconsistent, and you and I have discussed this. You know, there are certain crime types where you get a Rolls-Royce service, and there are other crime types where you are not. I think every victim is entitled to the Rolls-Royce service. Luckily in Devon and Cornwall, unlucky for the victim, we have very few victims of crime. It is not unreasonable to expect that level of service and ease of contact from the police. The difficulty arises when you leave the police side and you go into the judicial system and the court system, or you end up not with the perpetrator coming to justice. What victim support is there then available? And I think that's where the LCJB, and particularly your role as Commissioner, drawing people together and commissioning services is a real potential for us going forward.
So do you see a general, without either of us being complacent, do you see a general improvement in the support to victims and witnesses?
I will be honest and say it's inconsistent.
Yes.
I think there are some areas where it's improving and we can evidence it's improving. There are areas where it's plateaued.
Yes.
And that's, as I say, through the performance meeting, you will hold me to account
Yes.
for that. It's something I would want to do anyway.
Yes.
And I don't think it's a resource issue. I think it's a willingness issue.
Yes.
To provide a good public service to victims of crime.
A customer satisfaction type mentality, maybe.
Absolutely.
Yes. One now on volunteering, and this is it's a very interesting subject. This, as the policing family comes under pressure from the comprehensive spending review and things like that, and the policing family is expanding through to support from street pastors and such like. In my going out into the community, I sense a real appetite for people to volunteer to support the police. They want to do that. But many have started that journey and find it frustrating because they find the qualification period and vetting and that sort of thing a long journey for them. Can you tell me that you are supportive of volunteering to the police service, and if you're trying to improve that journey for volunteers.
Absolutely supportive. I have to, I'll try and break it up at
Yes.
a piece. Just on those headline figures, there's already over 600 special constables, volunteers but sworn with police powers, and you've given the commitment and the funding, and I'm committed to increasing that to 800 wherever we can over the period of your office. And why I say wherever I can is because at the end of the day you can't force people to be a volunteer, but that's the target that you've set and one which I believe is achievable. So we have already 600 specials, we have over 600 street pastors, we have over 400 cadets, and we have already 400 other volunteers. So I would say that's a pretty clear commitment to volunteering from the force. What you've touched upon, and I think fairly so, is the bureaucracy to actually getting to be a volunteer. And we have, as a result of your intervention, looked at that and tried to pare it down. There has to be a balance here, and like the criminal records check when you work with young people, if you work on behalf of Devon and Cornwall, you work under the brand of Devon and Cornwall Police and the Commissioner of Devon and Cornwall Police, and we want to keep that brand high. So it's not about competence, but it's issues of integrity and trust. And we both know that serving and full-time officers and staff sometimes let us down. We know that, that's the real world. But what I certainly couldn't have is someone coming in as a volunteer that we haven't checked that they are either fit for purpose or that we've trained them, because some of the volunteering work, particularly camera safety partnership, they're on very busy roads, it's a very dangerous environment, and we've got to make sure they're safe as well. But all in all, I would accept our systems and processes were not fit for purpose, and certainly with what I would want to do and what you've said you want to do, we can improve on that. My very last piece, recognising that my own workforce is listening to this, volunteers cannot be used as a cheap version for managing the comprehensive spending review. There has to be a full-time, efficient and effective force, because a volunteer by definition may choose to walk away, and therefore we have to be sure we can provide a service without the volunteers and recognise the volunteers add a value. And let's be clear, in Devon and Cornwall they certainly do add huge value, and we would be lost without them.